I'd like to call to order the March 28th meeting of the Clive City Council. Would the clerk please call roll?
Mayor Edwards,
Here.
council members Klein,
Here.
McCoy,
Here.
Judkins,
Here.
Weaver,
Here.
McElhenney.
Here. Very good. Could you all rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we have our agenda. I'm not aware of any changes.
For approval?
Second. Motion is second to approve the agenda. Further discussion, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Our agenda is approved. Next up, we have a proclamation for National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. And that would be April 14th through the 20th. And let me read the proclamation. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or EMS for Clive, Norwalk, Urbandale, Waukee, West Des Moines, and Windsor Heights. And whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. And whereas the safety of our officers, firefighters, and paramedics is dependent on the quality and accuracy of information obtained from residents who call Westcom. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first critical contact our residents have in their time of need to start emergency support services. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the vital link for our police officers, firefighters, and paramedics by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information, and ensuring their safety. And whereas public safety telecommunicators of Westcom have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients. And whereas each public safety telecommunicator has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their profession. Therefore, be it resolved that the week of April 14 through 20 will be National Public Safety Telecommunications Week in Clive to honor all those professionals whose diligence and expertise keeps our city and residents safe. So thanks to all of our Westcom folks for the great work they do. Matt, did you want to weigh in and say something?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. One thing I wanted to start off with, and I know Chief Mentola is there to do the Westcom update following this, but when I wanted to take a moment to put a little bit of context to something that recently happened amongst the Westcom family, and we lost one of our telecommunicators a couple of weeks ago. Jesse Hilsebeck passed away. He had been a dispatcher at Westcom or telecommunicator at Westcom for over 18 years. And had served Clive and cities of Clive, West Des Moines, and Urbandale during that entire time, and then the cities we've added since then. He lost his life due to a motorcycle accident. He was very active in his community and continued to give back to his community and others, even in death. He was an organ donor and has saved and extended the lives of a number of individuals. And so out of respect for, a loss to the Westcom family, I'd like to take just a brief moment of silence to honor Jesse and the substantial loss to his family and the Westcom family.
Let's take a moment of silence, please. Thank you all.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Next up, we have the Westcom annual update. Chief.
It's one of those. That one should be. Oh, that's it. Let's make some adjustments. Your honors, distinguished, I'm glad to present to you today a little short report on Westcom's accomplishments over the last year. And so it'll be very brief. First thing we're going to cover, I know I haven't officially met a lot of you. I do work with the police chief, fire chief, and city manager quite often. So we wanted to present to you a little of my background. 22 years in the Air Force, 19 years as a volunteer fire chief in a little rural place covering 150 square miles in 3 counties, and 27 years of public safety experience after I retired from the military. There's a little bit of the pedigree starting in 1997 and then began international work in the country of Belgium. After that, came back home to Christian County, Missouri, my home county, home state for a while, and then back off to Saudi Arabia for 7 years to build 911 centers from the ground up. They didn't exist. His Royal Highness came for a visit in the US, went back, says, I want this. And when His Royal Highness wants something, it is done, period. It's real simple. And then I was blessed to be selected as the chief of Westcom. We are recognized statewide as a regional leader in public safety communications for the model in which the 6 cities have put together under the 2080 agreement. It is unheard of. It's one of the things that drew me to this position. In all my years, there is no 6 elected governments that ever could come together with a common cause. But you guys have succeeded. You do it very well. And so that really attracted me as the future. We are top tier in our training. In fact, we are the only certified training entity in the state of Iowa from the National Association of Public Safety Communication Officials. And we're proud of that. We're only 50 in the existing in the United States as a whole. So it was a great accomplishment. We are the first responders. We are there in your time of need, in your desperate need, and even when your child needs to do a math equation in the middle of the night. I've received those calls as a call taker many times. Can you help me do my schoolwork? And I say, well, why is your parents there? Yes. Can they help you? No, they're stupid. I'm calling you, 911.
My kids called you again?
Yeah. We're also there in the time of need. A lot of lonely people in the world that just need to talk, and we're always there and glad to help. Come on. Uh-oh, there it goes. Some of our guiding principles is we always in service, collaboration, teamwork, and transparency. We're there 24/7, nonstop, no matter what. Even during our latest episode with the loss of Jesse, our fellow PSAPs in Des Moines, Polk County stepped up, provided people to sit in the seats so my staff could attend visitations and honor walks and funerals and all the other thing. And we're most grateful for the Metropolitan. 5-year strategic goals. As you notice, it says requiring additional funding. Had to put it on the table. You know, we're a growing agency. As the cities grows, we grow. But we have some basics. We want to create a legal structure to become an independent organization. Right now, we are basically a service entity to the 6 cities. But we'll see. That's the future, and that's truly based off growth. You know, as we grow, we have to become independent, as well as an independent funding model. So thankful for all the 6 cities. You are the funding model. We appreciate every penny that you allow us to spend. We're working on creating our CALIA certification to align with our fellow fire and police agencies. And we've created a 5-year technology plan. We're working on the final phases of that so that we can better forecast cost in the future, so that the city managers can better plan, so they can present to you a very good fiscal goal. Increase our staffing minimums, you know, you hear that all the time. We need more people, we need more people. We're no different. As call volumes grow, as you'll see here in a slide or two, we need more people to answer the phones. Simple as that. So statistically wise, we have a computer-aided dispatch system that we record and track everything. This is just the breakdown for Clive Police and Clive Fire. I'm sure the chiefs share statistics with you, but this is the number of records that we create in our system on your behalf. A good growing trend. And last year, 2,121 fire incidents, 15,000 police incidents. Over the 5 years, our call volume is increasing. We did have a downturn after COVID, but it's bounced right back up where it belongs. And we took 68,225 calls last year. Now, this is 911 calls, emergency calls only. We actually took another 117,000 administrative calls. You know, when's the park open? Where can I walk my dog? Those type of things.
Do you think that increase is due to the increase in population? With an increase in activity of crime or fire?
It's not, I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Weaver, because it was the other thing that attracted me to seek this job. Crime rate across the 6 cities is not really a crime rate. I'm telling you, I worked in Washington, D.C., worked in Rochester, El Paso, Texas, some pretty tough places. Crime rate is not a consideration. It's just people being involved. If you listen to the police scanners and things like that, people are involved in their community and they report. So yeah, no, some of it is growth, basically. You know, everybody has a cell phone. Every kid has a cell phone. You know, a prime example is 61% of the hotel rooms in the metropolitan or in our 6 cities run at a 61% occupancy rate right now. The growth is to be 69% in 2 years. Look at the city of West Des Moines, 77,000 population, but on a given day, Monday through Friday, it's 122,000 with all the employees that influx in and out of the city. With the Recplex and other things, we're drawing another 8,000 to 10,000 people per day on weekends. So it's just that you've built such a great community, it draws people. And with people have phones and phones down numbers, so. One of the other things is languages. We do run a language interpretation contract with a company called Language Line. Our highest language is Spanish, 11,000 minutes of Spanish interpretation last year, followed by, I can't say it, Tarina, but it's an African version. And Arabic jumped up there, which I was kind of surprised. But a total of 14,919 minutes, we were on the line with an interpreter talking. In fact, I even listened on the scanner last night, a patrol officer called in asking for an interpreter because he couldn't communicate with the person at the call where he was at. So we connect them up, patch them all together so they can talk. We have a short video. Am I running the video from here, Matt, or? Okay. This is a public information video that we prepared to be distributed as you wish. It's already been sent to all the city managers and cities.
Westcom 911 is the address of your emergency. When you dial 911, you set many people in motion depending on your emergency. Hi, I'm Jessica Klinker, the Training and Quality Assurance Coordinator here at Westcom Emergency Communications. When you call 911, you are immediately connected to a public safety telecommunicator. In the cities of West Des Moines, Clive, Urbandale, Norwalk, Waukee, or Windsor Heights, you will reach Westcom Dispatch. Westcom Dispatch is a consolidated center serving those cities for police, fire, and EMS departments. Your call triggers a chain of events, starting with explaining the situation to the public safety telecommunicator. Once the problem is known, the telecommunicator will then dispatch the appropriate agencies. The better the information you provide, the better prepared emergencies responders will be to help you. First, they will ask you the basic questions.
Westcom 911, what's the address of your emergency? Okay, give me the address one more time to make sure I heard you correctly. And what's your first name? And the phone number you're calling me from? Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
These questions help the public safety telecommunicator determine the type of resources that need to be sent. Once those basics have been obtained, your public safety telecommunicator starts help and then relays that information to the emergency responders. Your dispatcher will continue to ask questions. Is he responding normally? How many floors or stories are there? Or what do they look like? The questions we ask do not delay help. Depending on the type of emergency, responders have already been notified and are en route to your location. Now, depending on your emergency, you may have a police officer, ambulance, or fire truck, or any variation arrive to help. The public safety telecommunicator may stay on the phone until responders arrive. They will continue to provide instructions to help you and let the responding personnel know what is going on so they are better prepared to help you upon arrival. Once they arrive, the responders will make contact with you and continue providing help. The public safety telecommunicator will then hang up and help the next caller.
Call me back if anything changes, but keep yourself safe. Thank you.
So unless, well, let me get it. There it goes. Oh, it's not in slide mode. There we go. That concludes the presentation. We encourage anyone that would like to come visit the center, just give us a call. We give tours all the time and glad to show people around. We even have ride times if you want, or a family member, friend,
That's neat.
even a child wants to sit and listen and ride for a while. We have some forms you have to fill out for legality, but more than welcome. You know, the more we can get the message out, the better we are. Any questions of me?
Any questions for the chief?
I do have.
Yeah, go
one.
ahead, Ted.
So Chief, thanks for being here. Thanks for the presentation. Obviously, what you do is critically important and it's basic service that all of our residents expect from us. You mentioned the CALIA certification. So obviously our police department is certified in that. Is that just for prestige purposes or is there an actual tangible reason benefit for Westcom to have that?
Yeah, the CALIA originally was only police recognition accreditation, actually they call it. And now it's broadened out to include the communications portion as a separate entity to recognize that we are maintaining and following high standards of quality to produce service. Very few entities in the United States have that accreditation because it's a 2-year process just to go through the paperwork to be able to apply for the accreditation. Then you're evaluated, then you have to fly there. And you can ask Chief McCluskey over in Waukee because he just went through the gauntlet last week where he had to fly there and in front of a board, answer questions and all about their process of certification. So he could say it's a bell, it's an achievement we want to achieve to show that we are who we are and we serve who we serve.
Have you started that process then?
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, we have started the process. We're only about a year into it right now. So it'll take some more time, but we'll get there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chief, I just want to thank you for your service to the country. We've got several veterans up here as well, so we appreciate that. Thank you to your service to a lot of communities. Very impressive resume. Clearly, you're the right man for the job, and Westcom really, I know I appreciate a guy like you with everything you bring to the table. So thanks again.
Thank you, sir.
Other questions? I'm gonna have, yeah, go ahead.
I have a
Michael.
follow-up. With Ted's question, Councilman Weaver's question on CALIA. What's the cost to CALIA? kind of all in for that 2 years plus?
I honestly, I'm going to have to just honestly say I don't know.
Okay.
I'd have to research that and get back with you, and I can share it with the city manager
Yeah.
to pass it along to you. Yeah, there's an investment. I hate to misquote the numbers, so, but I can get that for you for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know if this was where Ted was going with it, but it's certainly what it comes to my mind right away is, typically the ROI on it and so that cost versus the benefit, and is that returning you something tangible, whether it be insurance dollars or whether it be,
Right.
that type of
Understand.
thing. I get the box to check, the bell to ring,
Right.
that type of thing, but the bell to ring at what cost is a whole nother issue.
Okay.
That we need to keep an eye on. So if we're a year into it and we don't know the total cost, that makes me a little nervous. And so, yeah, I'd ask Matt to maybe get back to us on that.
Yeah, it's not, right now, it's all about paperwork. It's just us getting all our paperwork in the right order, in the right place.
But as we know-
Technology wise, we're fine. There's no new technology we'll have to buy to meet any criteria because we're already on the cutting edge.
I
So-
imagine we're paying them something.
I'm
They
sure
all
we
want
are.
Something for that ribbon.
Yeah,
And they're
Oh,
usually
yeah.
very proud of the plaque they give you.
correct.
But also we're asking for more personnel. And in the meantime, saying it's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
Which means a lot of personnel time.
Yep.
And so
Understand.
all those things to look at.
Your Honor, if I could.
Yeah, go
offer
ahead.
One thing as well, for the council to know, I mentioned it before, you get a very quick sense anytime you get down to the dispatch center that this is an organization built on great people, but it's also built on amazing technology. And then when you think about having then to connect technology that's there with all of the other places where dispatch is happening, where all the apparatus is at, where all of the patrol is at, it gets complex quickly. So over the past 5 years, after there were some disruptions on our technology side of things with Westcom and with some member communities, there's been a real concerted effort to make sure that we've got our tech sort of in best condition possible and that we've built redundancy in these systems as well. The IT point people for the respective cities have with some frequency been getting together to talk about how they can continue to stay on that good trend. And Chief, I would just offer to you that our staff here in Clive very much appreciates those opportunities. I think you've met both Dennis and James
Yes.
and had a chance to talk with them. And I'd encourage other member communities to make sure that they've identified their tech point person so that group can continue to help everybody stay where we need to be on that. Because the minute the technology goes down, whether it's a fiber cut or whether it's MDCs that are not working, then we're back to writing paper tickets with a patrol, doing a lot of things that our officers in this generation have probably never done before, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the
The
technology-
cyber attack that occurred, it was the awakening that the system needed improvement. And we've been on that track, even though I've only been here a year. This year, we're building up the final, as you said, redundancy, the duplicate system, so that you can't hurt us. You may cut over here, but we still survive over here. We're upgrading all the computer software this year as well. And then we've already completely did this for the telephone system. I can guarantee you at no time will 911 telephone ever fail for us because we have redundancy over in Des Moines and we have redundancy here. You'd have to cut fiber in 4 places at the same simultaneous time to take us offline. And then we have Dallas County backs us up automatically and then state police backs up them. So we put in a lot of, I don't believe in primary, secondary. I believe in primary, secondary, tertiary, and a backup plan. So that's the path we're going down. And as we seek our new facility in the future, space is optimum. You know, we're in 7,000 square foot. We really need about 15,000. All that will be meticulously considered to make sure that we provide you service at all times.
Anything else?
It's an impressive facility and,
It is.
and personnel.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Chief. We
welcome.
appreciate you being here and the great work that you're doing.
There we go.
Thank you. And speaking of bringing various communities together for the greater good, Sally.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, 6 communities. We got 17. We got a lot going on. We have a great partnership happening. Is it just here somewhere? Oh. I don't know. Oh yeah, this one right here. There you go. Okay, great. Thank you all so much for the opportunity to be here. I really appreciate the chance to thank you in person for the investment that you make in Bravo that makes our work possible. We could not do it without the local government partners, of course. And I especially want to thank Councilmember Judkins, who serves as the city's representative on the Bravo board. She is a tremendous advocate and partner, and we appreciate her time and service very much. I'm going to try to give a high-level overview of the work that we're doing and a couple of projects we have in the pipeline. Do have a tendency to talk fast, though, so if you have any questions or want me to go deeper on anything, please just let me know. So most of you are fairly tenured on the council. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide. You know who we are, you know what we do, and you know what service area we cover. I just want to point out that we are currently 17 communities and we remain 99.9% funded with hotel motel tax dollars. We generally do not raise funds. We do not want to compete with the organizations we were formed to support. I'm going to come back to that in just a minute, but we are very reliant and appreciative of the cities that invest in us to do the work that we do. We are currently a staff of 4, me plus 3, to manage and execute all of the work that we're doing on behalf of the region. Of course, Bravo is best known for our grant making. That's all we did for our first 15 years, and we're very proud of the fact that we have now exceeded $60 million of public funds invested into arts, culture, and heritage organizations. Yes. Arts, culture, and heritage organizations across the region. Of course, many of them are organizations you know about, a nationally acclaimed professional symphony, an art center, a zoo that serves nearly 500,000 visitors a year to the region, which is really exciting. We also have a rich tapestry underneath that, though, those large entities that most people are familiar with. We're supporting a number of organizations, including the Des Moines African Youth Festival Awards, which is actually bringing in talented African youth from around the world to celebrate a love of fashion and music. We have an organization called City Voices that provides free voice lessons for students who want to sing but may not have the resources to study privately. These are all organizations that are elevating the caliber of our community. Only 13% of the organizations Bravo supports have budgets over $2 million. 55% of the organizations Bravo supports have budgets below $50,000. There is a wide range of organizational need and investments that we're making. And again, they're all adding to the landscape. In addition to general operating support grants, we also offer capital project support grants and public art grants. This has been an increasing priority for many of our communities. People want to live in places that have dynamic and unique accessible public art. Clive has obviously been on the front of this for many years. Many of our other communities are catching up. We certainly have funded a lot of sculptures in parks, which we're really proud of, but we also love the conversations that are happening now about actually integrating public art into infrastructure. Again, City of Clive has been leading the way on those conversations. Matt and Pete have been tremendous to work with, visionary partners, and we are excited about some of the projects we have coming, including an investment that was made last year of $100,000 to the City of Clive for a public art project along the Icon Water Trails. This is showing post-pandemic that revenues are strong and Bravo continues to invest more with more. We are still, our largest investments are those operating grants. This year, we anticipate overall with all of our grant making programs, we'll be able to return about $5 million to the community through those direct grant programs. The good news is that revenues are up. because we are funding more partners. We are grateful that there's more pie, but there's also a lot more people at the table. In our first grant year, Bravo was funding 33 nonprofit cultural partners. This current cycle that we're in, GC 24, we're funding 87 nonprofit cultural partners across the region. So the landscape has grown, and we're grateful to have the resources to be able to continue to invest and support. Beyond grant making, Bravo also contributes to the region by providing leadership on arts and culture issues and opportunities. There are just certain things that a single grant to a single organization cannot achieve. And so Bravo leads or invests in projects and programs that further align arts, culture, and heritage with regional priorities. Two examples here. One are art shelters, working with DART to enhance the bus shelters that are being added to create visibility and create everyday, everywhere art moments. And then another example is a Dream Cube project we invested in to create some visibility around youth homelessness. We also are investing in conversations about research, and this is a much, much smaller piece. It wouldn't even show up if I put it on the chart of how Bravo's investments are being used, but it is still an incredibly important role that we play. Whether you are passionate about public art or arts and culture nonprofits, or you want to know what that ROI is, this investment that we're making, I do want to make sure that you understand that this is more than a nice to have for our region. The organizations that Bravo's investing in are generating tremendous economic impact. We released this data in November of last year. This is just the nonprofit arts, culture, and heritage sector. So this is basically the organizations that Bravo is investing in. They are generating about $309 million worth of annual economic impact. This was measured by a national study collected by Americans for the Arts and supported by Bravo. You can see 5,439 jobs. And the number I especially like to call out in these rooms is that tax revenue generated. These organizations are not just on the take. Bravo is taking the investments that you are making in us of public dollars, and we are generating public dollars in addition to that economic impact. The year this data was collected, Bravo invested a little bit more than $4 million. It was close to $4.5 million. For those that can't do math that fast, that's about a 70-to-1 return on investment. So I would challenge you to find another way to spend public dollars that are returning that high of a return. Beyond the economic impact, I also think it's important. I know workforce is a huge question, a huge challenge for every region across the country. If you look at this study from LinkedIn Learning, you can see those top 5 soft skills. These are all the things that arts and culture are cultivating, both in our community and across the country. These are essential interpersonal skills, and the more we can be providing opportunities and experiences for the workforce here, I think this is better for our region overall for the long term. So looking forward, a couple of things that we're doing in additional to our general operations, a couple major projects that we're working on. Bravo actually only operates one program. Everything else that we do is through investments in other people. That's intentional. We didn't always even want to operate this program, but it's a critically important program and it's been very successful. And we are the right partner to be running this. And that is our Passport to Culture program. This is funds that go directly to the school districts in all 17 communities that Bravo supports. And those dollars can be used by the school for field trip experiences for their students to get them out of the classroom, or to provide cultural experiences in the school. We used to call them assemblies. I don't even know if they do that anymore, but to have cultural experiences in the classroom. This is a program that was started in 2008. It's gone through multiple iterations, but supporting this program is clearly aligned with Bravo's strategic plan and regional cultural priorities to make sure that youth have access to arts and culture. Currently, the city of Clive, funding for the city of Clive is every student in the city of Clive gets funding, but they get it at different levels, whether they're in West Des Moines or whether they're in Windsor Heights. But on average, every student, every K through 5 student in the city of Clive is getting about $4 worth of investment through this program. We are, because the community has expressed such demand for this program, we are kicking off a $3 million capital endowment campaign to secure funding to fund this program in perpetuity. The campaign feasibility study was conducted last fall. Matt McQuillan participated, and I think Mayor Edwards also sat in on that conversation. And I think Pete was in the room as well, giving us feedback. There were 28 interviews conducted, including individuals, corporate representatives, foundations, and public feedback. The study indicated that Bravo has a very strong reputation. We are seen as an advocate and a thought leader across the community, and feedback on the program was very strong, lots of support. Arts and culture was also identified as important to many, and particularly when we think about a youth focus for arts and culture. Equity is also top of mind, and the feasibility study also clearly affirmed that Bravo is the right partner to have this endowment and operate the program. We also heard very clearly that it will not compete with the fundraising done by the individual organizations that Bravo supports. That was a specific and intentional question that we asked to make sure we weren't going to go out and cannibalize anything that was already happening. I want to be clear that no additional money from the city of Clive will be requested for this campaign, and 0 hotel motel taxes from the city received by Bravo from our 2080 partners will go to the endowment. 100% of this will be from corporate, individual, and private sources. And we do begin making asks here soon. We actually have a couple of applications already out there. We hope to have the entire campaign complete by the end of 2024. We want to get in and get out. We want to make sure that this program is funded in perpetuity so that more of the public funds you're investing in us can go into other programs. Another project that we just recently completed was a creative space needs assessment. We worked with a consultant out of Colorado, got some interesting feedback from our nonprofit partners about some of their rate limiting factors, which just happens to be physical space. You just heard from your municipal partner that space is a little bit of a challenge for them. We're hearing that from our nonprofit partners as well. And it runs the gamut from organizations that don't even have a place to put their desk and a printer, all the way up to the need for a 500 to 800 seat purpose-built performance venue. So there's, again, always a wide range of things. Bravo's priority after completing this study is really matchmaking. It's not our role to get into the real estate development. We're not going to begin creating spaces. That's not our current vision. That's outside of our scope. But we do feel like that research allows us to entertain and create conversation space, and hopefully some of those partners that need space can get matched with partners that have space. As we conclude, as I said, I do have a tendency to talk fast. If you just remember one thing about this presentation, I hope you'll know that arts and culture are truly integral to everything we're trying to do in this community, from education to economic development to mental health to civic dialogue. Arts and culture really truly are making everything better, and we're grateful for the opportunity to play the role that we do and leverage the resources you're willing to invest in us to do that work. So thank you again for the chance to present. Thank you again, Councilmember Judkins. We do really appreciate your time and service, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions for Sally? Go ahead.
Sally, thanks again for the presentation. We always appreciate it. 2 questions. One is, tell us a little bit about the annual gala as far as numbers, participation, if there's any changes and what you're ascertaining that to. And then if you'd also talk about some of the investments that Bravo's made in Clive organizations as
Yeah.
well, I'd appreciate it.
Yep. So the gala was another success this year. We were celebrating, if you can believe it, Bravo's 20 years old in 2024. So we kicked off our celebrations for that. We had about 1,200 people attend. We netted, we don't quite have the final numbers, somewhere between $180,000 and $190,000 net. We obviously generate a good amount more than that. It is a little bit less than what we budgeted, and we do attribute that to a couple of factors. One is we had hoped to have 1,500 people in the room. We ended up with closer to 1,200. The second thing that we would attribute that to is we are seeing anywhere between 18 and 25% increases from some of our major vendors. We have zero negotiating power. The food costs what it costs. There's only one venue in the whole city that can accommodate an event of our size. And we don't have a lot of leverage to say, with inflation and labor fees going up, we don't have a lot of leverage. So we're still very proud of the number that we brought in. I think there are a lot of organizations that would be feeling really good about $185,000 net revenue. And we just had another meeting today, starting to plan for 2025. So we'll keep doing it. Second question was about investments in Clive. There are historically, so I'm just looking at the GC 24, we run on a calendar year for our operating grants. And in GC 24, we were funding the Clive Historical Society. That's the only organization in Clive. We did also, though, give the funding through the Icon Water Trails grant of $100,000 to the project here in the city of Clive. So those are two examples on top of the Passport to Culture investments. If you combine West Des Moines and, is it the Waukee School District? Yeah, sorry, I said West Des Moines. If you combine the investments to West Des Moines and Waukee, it's over $30,000 of investment for youth experiences in those two cities. Of course, that's not entirely serving residents of Clive, but that's lumped into that. So it's a substantial investment, about $4 per K through 5 student.
How much was the investment in Clive Historical?
$1,125.
Other questions?
I just really have a
Susan.
comment. I think it's good for everyone to know that Mike McCoy from NCMEC has been the chair of the board, and he addressed the audience, of course, at the gala. And I really thought his comments knocked it out of the park in his saying that he'd never fully connected an understanding of the value of arts and culture to the business community. And getting involved in Bravo has helped him to see that. Do you have any comments about that?
No, I just think it's, Bravo has historically not done a great job of telling our story. There are a lot of people, I always say we're a pretty well-known organization, but not a very well understood organization. And so we do require a little bit more depth and a little bit more engagement, and are grateful for business partners, for city partners. That's why I always appreciate the chance to come and share a little with you about the work that we're doing, so that you do have line of sight to the impact that it's having. And it really does cross every sector. There's nothing happening that arts and culture can't make better. I might need a minute to make the connection, but there's nothing happening that arts and culture can't make better.
Quick question.
All right, Jed.
So you mentioned the 17 communities, and looking at your map, I noticed there are a number of kind of adjacent, just outlying communities that are not included. You know, I could throw out Adel, Van Meter, Huxley, Granger, right? A lot right on the periphery that are growing quite substantially. And most of those, it's a lot of new construction out in those communities, and most of those are folks who commute into the metro. Is there any conversation between you and your staff and your board about expansion to some of those additional communities?
It's an interesting question, and no, not until recently, but I have gotten that question more times in the last couple of weeks than I have historically. There are many regional organizations, Bravo, the Partnership, DART, Catch Des Moines. We do not define the region in the same way. 0 of those partners define the region in the same way. So I think we just have to look at what the opportunity is for us to, one thing that Bravo takes seriously is if we're going to do it, we're going to do it with excellence. And if we expand much bigger, can we continue to serve in the way that our current partners would expect? Or does it begin to dilute the impact that we're
Well, I
able
would
to
say it also
have?
helps to defray some of the costs for the existing member communities. And you do have a lot of residents in those outliers that are using the arts and culture in the metro. So they're getting the benefit without any of the responsibilities. So
It's a,
I would encourage you to think about that and look
Yep.
at that. There's a lot of these kind of, you know, adjacent communities that I think that are benefiting.
it's a great point, and it is already on our agenda for our next executive committee meeting. So
Thank you.
I agree with you. I think it'd be difficult, and this is, I don't know a lot about inner workings of your organization, but you mentioned at the beginning, it's 99% funded by hotel motel taxes. Not sure how many hotels are in Huxley, so
Valid.
the model would have to change. But I do believe that model of what
Yeah.
you're saying is somewhere there should be able to, a Perry, you know, how do you grow that? I mean, it's more.
Yeah, and
You're
some of these
right, that-
are growing to like Cumming, for example. They are getting some hotels and
That's
things of that
That's right.
nature. So they may not be there, but that's a good point. But some of these communities are growing enough where they are starting to add some of
That's right.
those
And
amenities.
there's other creative ways to get
Right.
them to help fund projects than just the hotel. And maybe they're not members. You know, my
Right.
day job has members and non-voting members.
Good point.
on the agenda and an important conversation. The community has changed. The dynamics have changed. We've only brought on one city. I've been with Bravo for 10 years and we've only brought on one city in that time. Is it time to explore? Is it time to explore more? And as I said, it's a great question and on the agenda for April. We'll get back to you.
Great.
Thanks for asking, Ted.
Anything else?
At least the Dallas County supervisors can give some money.
That's right.
Minimum.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank
Sally.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for your support.
Mike?
Evening, Mayor and Council. Pleased to introduce the Clive Police Department's newest employee. Tasha Snowberger came to Clive from the city of Minburn, where she was the city clerk and the self-described jack of all trades. She's an Iowa native, married with a 2-year-old daughter, and they live on an acreage and has a horse, a pony, and chickens. And in her spare time, whatever that is, she trains her cadaver dog, Riggs. She's part of a volunteer cadaver dog training, or not training, search and rescue program in Iowa. So I'd like to introduce you to Tasha Snowberger. You'll see her in the police records room behind our beautiful glass. So let her say a few words.
So it's nice to be here. I'm really excited. I thought that like this opportunity would really broaden my knowledge and create a new skill set. I'm always continuing or trying to continue to learn, and yeah, I just thought this would be an excellent fit and time for me to move on and learn something new, and I'm super excited to be here.
You have
So-
about 11 more minutes.
Oh,
Actually,
shoot.
12.
You told me to skim it, so I skimmed too much, but yeah.
You don't have to commute from Minburn, do you?
No.
That's a long commute.
Yeah, I just live about 30 minutes from here, which is no commute to me. Like, to me, 30 minutes is nothing when you can just get anywhere. So yeah, it's not too bad, but yeah.
We're glad to have you on board.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. Next on the agenda is our citizens presentation. This is the opportunity for anyone to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda. And Pete, if you want to check to see if there's anyone online. And while Pete does that, I'll just remind everyone of the principles that we follow. And those are the pillars of character counts. Endeavoring at all times to promote and model the principles of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. And in all of our business, we expect everyone to follow those principles. So if you could identify yourself for the record, typically we allow about 5 minutes for presentations, and Matthew will set a timer just to make sure we can let you know when your time's up.
All right. My name is Gabe Swears, and I live at 1466 Northwest 96th Street in Clive, and it's an honor to be addressing you all. I'm an engineer and a project manager, and I'm not that great with slideshows or PowerPoint anymore, so it's a little goofed up, but I think we'll make it through. What I wanted to address you guys about is I was recently at a variance, Board of Adjustment meeting for variance, and my variance didn't get approved, but that's not what I'm here about. What I'm here about is, as I said, I'm an engineer and a project manager, engineer by trade, kind of a contractor / engineer by profession. I work for a company that does a design build all over the country of heavy and light industrial complexes. And I've not seen, I had some pretty serious concerns while I was at that meeting. And I'm part of local and state variances pretty often with my job. And I had never seen a process like this, and I had some very serious concerns as a part of that process. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started. My title didn't really show up, but that's okay. So this was kind of and before I start actually too, I want to say a few things. First of all, the city staff, in working with them on my own personal project, right? Most of my work is industrial and stuff, but I do residential stuff obviously too. They've been great to work with. They've been fantastic. So, and the variance members, I mean, they're all volunteers, and you know, they were professional and respectful and kind. They're doing a great job as well. I think that from what I understand, the limited that I understand, this is a somewhat new system. And so I think there's just some fundamental, that I see anyways, issues with the way that we're addressing this process. And this is where it starts. These are the 7 qualifications, these 7 questions that have to be answered in a certain way, and they all have to be answered in a certain way in order for a variance to be granted. Now, I think there's 2 issues here. Some of the questions are great. Some of them I think inherently have some problems in practicality. But the biggest thing is there's a very, I can't stress that enough, strict interpretation of these questions. And I only have 5 minutes, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but this is kind of the background. Here are my concerns. These are the things that jumped out at me. So number 1 is probably the least concerning and probably the least, but I do think that there is an issue. I think citizens of Clive are probably being held to a higher standard than what one would expect as being, right? If you live in the country, you can do a lot more stuff. And if you live in the city, you recognize and you voluntarily give up some rights to be able to do a few more things. And that's okay, we expect that. And if you live in an HOA, you give up even more freedoms, and that's voluntary. And I think that City of Clive residents are being held to maybe a little bit higher standard than what one would expect typically. But here's the real 2 through 6 are the biggest ones. I would argue right now there is really no real or meaningful variance process in the City of Clive. I would also say that, again, the City of Clive staff has done a great job, but I think this is a new process. I know the city staff is not meant to weigh in regarding various decisions, but I think the process that's been designed by whoever designed it, the process is by its very nature dictating the decisions very strictly. Number 4, at the very least, and this is, I think, a product of this being a very new system. At the very least, citizens need to be warned that variances are almost never granted. That is the state currently. It's a very new state, but variances are almost never granted. It is a significant amount of money to apply for a variance, and there is paperwork and time involved. Myself, I had a unique situation, and so but I know other people at the meeting who had just started the application process in the last 3 months felt like this wasn't going to be a big deal. And then all of a sudden, whoa, what's going on here? You know, I wish I would have known that this was going to be an issue. Number 5, the current process, and this is a big one, the current process is not good, it's not sustainable, and it's not practical governance, I don't think. I really do not think it's practical or sustainable. And then lastly, the process is not equitable, which I hope to be able to go in on at the end of my presentation, but this is a big one too. So I only have a limited time, so I'm not going to go through, belabor all the points, but I wanted to I isolated just a few audio clips from the meeting last, whenever it was, 2 weeks ago, that I wanted to go through and kind of let the members speak for themselves. So this was one of the members, this was Mr. Terry Brown, who was on the BOA adjustments. And this is really him speaking to the parameters they've been given. And I think it's somewhat self-condemning to the process. And so that's why I wanted to share it with you.
We're at 5 minutes. How long is this clip?
This clip is, I think maybe just 30 seconds or something.
Okay, if that's the only clip, we'll go ahead and look.
There are some other ones, but I can skip them.
No.
Oh, that was not supposed to be the clip. I'm not good with PowerPoint.
You also have the ability to put this in slides and send it to us, and we can
Review it. Okay.
review it outside of this session. And then Doug,
Go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead. Are
Sorry.
you able to play it or not?
Well, this one's a little bit longer one. It is Mr. Brown, but it's probably a 3-minute one.
So I'd suggest that maybe you send that to us, and then each of us could review that.
Okay.
And then, Doug, could you just give us a 1-minute overview and whether or not you have statistics and can provide that to us on, variances granted, denied, and so forth?
I would like to say one thing before, well, Doug, I thought I'd get you before you got to the mic, but I appreciate all this and I agree with the mayor. I'd like to listen to all this and learn more about it. I would say though that a variance in itself isn't supposed to be easy. That's the variance, right? To me, I see it different. I see that it needs to be an extreme circumstance of why you would need a variance to the rule that everybody applies to. And so if I were to go into for a variance, I would think that I'm going to be lucky to get one, right? Because otherwise everybody's going to get one. And so if you think that the lottery is for everybody, then we might as well not have any rules at all if everybody's going to be mad that they don't get a variance. And so the statistics to me are less important, I think, of so many people got variances. To me, it'd be if it's heavy that people got variances, I would say we need to tighten it down more because that's not what it's for.
Well, I mean, we've seen a situation where we had a lot of variances that we were granting, so we just went ahead and changed the ordinance because that made more sense, right?
Right.
Rather than going through the variance process every time.
Patios or the decks on the.
Yeah,
back,
that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah. So.
And I would add as well, and I agree with you that I've seen a number of ordinances that have been, variances have been granted over the years, right? We've all been on doing this for quite some time, and certainly not everyone is, if everyone was accepted, then there'd be a problem with the system, but
100%.
I've seen my fair share. When you say almost none, well, I would beg to differ because I've seen many over, my 14 years of being on the council, and I know Doug can address some of those, but they are granted, they're out there, they might be difficult, but there have been numerous ones that have been granted.
And just, I guess, one last thing.
Can you stick to the podium, please?
Okay.
Yeah.
Based on what I heard at the meeting, there's been a pendulum that's happened over the years, I would say. And I think they're coming off of a time when probably too many variances were being granted and it was probably too lax. And I think this is a very, very recent change. And so I just think the pendulum's corrected a little bit too hard. I don't know how much historical data. The number that I heard, and I don't know how much of a hard this started and forward, but it was the last 3 months. So that's not very long. But that was the number that I heard at the meeting, that this is a 3-month-old new system.
All right. Well, Doug, perhaps you could address that last question.
Sure. In terms of statistics of how many variances, special use permits, et cetera, have been granted, off the top of my head, I don't have that information. We can certainly give you the statistics for the last 5 years or the last 25 years if you want to go back that far. That's not a problem. Just for reference purposes, there were 4 considerations in front of the Board of Adjustment 2 weeks ago. 2 of the 4 were affirmed for variance. Again, 50% isn't necessarily the historical number, but that is just what the case was for this particular meeting. In terms of the process, what I would say is the process is defined fairly specifically by state code. The methodology used by the individual boards of adjustments or the communities is a little bit variable. It needs to fit the community. However, the criteria for the decision-making process is established by state code. What changed with the city of Clive is there was a level of concern that we were not putting an adequate amount of information, the facts of the case, on the record. So the process was modified a bit to be more specific in having an answer to the criteria that's required by state code. So although the process may feel a little bit clunky in terms of answer this question, this question, this question, this question, and then make a decision on the variance, it is all necessary. And that part, in terms of the substance of the questions, that has not changed one bit. That's, again, something that's established by state code and is required for the decision-making process. Answer your questions, or do you have others?
Are you saying those 7 questions that he showed that as the criteria, that's dictated by state, or is that by us?
That's state.
That's from the
So
state.
that's establishing the unnecessary hardship in the particular case of the request.
Gotcha.
Is there a reasonable use to the property without the granting of a variance?
Eric?
Doug, could you address some of the training that the Board of Adjustment Commission goes through in order to make these positions?
Yeah, so, with a volunteer group and a group that does change over time, either because of term limits or because people move out of the city, we do have to continually work with folks to bring them up to speed on what their responsibilities are, what their role is, and how they go about building that record for the particular cases. As you all are aware, the Board of Adjustment is a quasi judicial body. So appeals beyond the Board of Adjustment are going to end up in court. And so making sure that the record is very clear on the decision-making process is very important. And that's what we've been working on with the board over the last few months to tighten up that particular piece of the process.
And would you clarify what the council's role is if there's denial or an approval by the Board of Adjustment?
Certainly. Again, state code establishes what you're able to do with a decision of the Board of Adjustment. The city council has the ability to remand a variance that has been granted for reconsideration. If they deny a variance, it is then the applicant's responsibility to file an appeal in district court. The city council has no role in that part of the process. As you had indicated, certainly in those circumstances where you feel like there's a long history of variance or unnecessary regulation for property owners, you folks have considered amendments to the ordinance to address the matter that way. That is your role as the legislative body. Staff is here obviously to enforce your regulations, and the Board of Adjustment is there as a check against that part of the process.
Other questions for Doug?
So he's going to just send us the full presentation, is that right? So
Well, I think I'll
It's-
change, just because PowerPoint maybe isn't the best for communicating via email. I'll probably change the format a little bit and add a few things to it, but then I would like to send it to the city council members. That's the best
Well,
way.
or
city manager.
Or to Matthew. Okay,
send it to Matthew and Matthew
Okay.
will get it out.
yeah, so I'll send that out end of this week.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no problem.
Well, we appreciate you coming in
Yeah.
and again, staff can develop statistics, but I think those of us who have been here a while have seen a good mix of grants as well as denials. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think.
And I'm not, and I want to make clear, I don't want to talk about my thing. I don't intend on suing the city. I intend on getting in compliance. And I'm not, I just as someone who goes through the process all over the country, I was concerned.
Well, maybe you can, in your email, make some suggestions of other best practices that you've seen in other places that maybe we're not doing.
Okay, yeah.
That'd be helpful.
I will be interested in the audio too, right? I just want to hear
I will
kind of
try to
the,
attach those.
yeah.
So
Or I
like, to
can
be honest,
go,
it was a
I
stretch for
can
me
go
to
listen.
attach an audio file to a PowerPoint, because that's what level of,
Yeah, I don't-
I'm great. but-
I can go listen. I mean, we can go listen.
I've got like notes for where all the things are, because I've listened to it all.
Yeah.
There was about 18 different audio things. I just picked the top 3 that I want to share, so.
Well, you'd send us indications where we
Yeah,
could look. We
yeah.
can, and we could play it either way.
Thanks.
All right. Anyone else here in the chamber for an item not on the agenda? Yes, sir. If you'd please come forward and address the council and identify yourself, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dakota Durr. I live at 9720 Clark Street. I have a couple of handouts here. There's not enough to go around, but if someone would mind distributing those a little bit, just so you can follow along. Is there a document camera still that I could show? All right, thank you. So my wife and I have lived in our home for almost 21 years. And we've definitely learned a lot about easements and such in the last couple of months. So in January, MetroNet came and we had no idea, and suddenly we saw a bunch of people in our backyard. So essentially, we weren't that concerned because they're burying cable. We're never going to see it again, right? But they left this access panel, and it's a large access panel. It's, as we found out later, It's not just what they call a flower pot. It is actually a hub. So all the houses around, they'll use this hub to hook them up. So they need to access it frequently. It's inside our fence. And there are several things with this that just have raised a lot of concerns for us. So I'll just summarize the request and give a little bit more background. I'll keep it brief. Our request is to extend the utility easement that currently extends into our backyard, but does not extend very far behind our fence. To extend that a little bit farther behind our fence so that there's room to bury cables back there. That's really for two reasons. One is for safety and liability concerns with our pool that we have in our backyard. The other is if additional providers come in future, we want them to have a better place. And it's going to work out better for both them and us. So we definitely appreciate your support on this. I do want to talk through, you can see the upper right photo there. You can see that there's a lot of room behind our fence. It backs up to Indian Hills Woods. And there's really nothing there for a number of feet, not even any new plantings. So there's plenty of room for utility companies to be there. What we didn't realize before is that we didn't realize that the easement basically starts at our fence and goes inward toward our house. And I will just say that our fence has been there since we moved in, so I have no knowledge of how this all came about in the first place. There are also cable utilities already outside the easement. As you can see in the top right, there's a cable, like a cable box there. And for whatever reason, MetroNet buried their cable behind our neighbors' fences outside the easement as well. And so our request, again, that we feel would address several issues, including our concerns and some neighbor concerns, is that we would get an extension of that easement to go behind our fence so that future companies can bury cable there. And also, we would like to address this with MetroNet right now in the conversations we've had with them. There's no place for them to go. So, we'd like them to move the access panel. We know that's possible from our conversations with them. However, they don't have anywhere to move it to. It's outside our fence. I just want to cover these safety concerns really quick. We have an in-ground pool. The star on the top left picture is where the access panel is. We have kids in and out of that pool all the time, neighborhood kids, our own kids. The kids in the neighborhood know that the pool is there. MetroNet has repeatedly left gates open as they go in and out. We're very concerned about someone wandering in. And then just the last concern I'll mention at the bottom there is we found a number of pieces of debris in our lawn after they have done their work, large pieces of cable, et cetera. Could be very dangerous for young children playing back there. So we think there are a lot of reasons that it's just common sense. This really should be outside our yard. And that is our request.
Questions for Dakota?
Yeah, what are you asking the council for? What is your ask? Because I don't see our role here.
My understanding of the process is I need to introduce this request to the council, then it can proceed through the easement process. Extension.
Changing the easement.
Correct.
So
for Matt or Doug, how complicated or challenging is that to change the easement to give Dakota what he's asking for?
Looks like Matt's ready to speak. Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Your Honor. Yeah, the process by which to create another easement would require obviously development of the easement documentation itself. This would be placing a public utility easement, an additional public utility easement on the city's property along Indian Hills Woods to the south of the fence that Dakota is referring to on his property. And of course, if you're going to do an easement of this sort, you're not likely to do it in just one small spot behind one individual lot. There is a public utility easement that runs behind all of the lots to the east and west of Dakota's property. If the council directed staff to develop said easement, there would be development of the legal documentation, staff time to develop that. We would have to have a set of public hearing because that would be imposing any type of easement that's imposed on public property or use of public property in that way requires a public hearing and approval by the council. The one thing I want to point out here, and I might ask Jeff or Doug to help me out a little bit in terms of how maybe some of these other utilities have ended up outside of the easement in the past, is in terms of what's the city's ability to move utilities. So even if a new easement was put in place south of the fence line, the city does not have the ability to force MetroNet to move out of a ready established public utility easement. As the council is aware, with MetroNet's announcement of a citywide build for the fiber system that MetroNet was putting in, we've established a staff person, our right-of-way specialist, Jared Atchison, who's been working diligently to make sure that MetroNet is staying within their easements that are laid out all across the city. So there's multiple examples of across the city of a situation similar to what the Deers have, where they have a fence line and the easements inside of the fence line, and there may be pools and other backyards amenities that are inside the fence line. And this is the case in multiple places across the city. Now I can't speak to how things happened in the past. But when the utilities are outside of the public utility easement, if, like, for example, on the city's property behind the fence line, if the city decides to do an improvement project that requires those utilities to be moved, the utility has to move them back into the utility easement at the utility's cost. But if they're within the utility easement and for some reason the city needs it moved for a public improvement project, then it's on the city to force that move and the expenses of that move. So I know I'm trying to explain kind of some of the dynamics here with this particular situation. And in the past, with MediaCom and even Mid-American, those utilities were put in quite a long time ago. And whether, the level of diligence of making sure that those utilities were within the easement that care might not have been there in the past. But I don't know, Jeff, if you wanted to kind of explain a little bit of how that movement can happen from one utility in and outside of the easement and the city's ability to move those.
Just quickly, when a utility comes and applies to put in something, we make them put it in the PUE. That's where it's supposed to be, in the public utilities easement. We approve the plans for it to be in the public utilities easement and require them to put it there. Pete's aware of it. All of us have dealt with many situations where people prefer it not to be in their yard, but it's in the public utility easement. We put it there accordingly. After we approve those plans, there are times they don't put it where they're supposed to put it. Just to is it east of you, I believe, a little bit. Someone built a building over the PUE, so they went out around into our property, did not go under the facility. We can force them to go back into the PUE. I mean, we have every right to tell them you were supposed to put it in the PUE and you can put it there. What we can't tell them is we told you to put it there. Now we want you to put it somewhere else after we approve that. So that's kind of where we're at with this. We can make MetroNet go move everything and put it back in right now, but as Matt alluded to, if it's ever in our way, since they're not where they're supposed to be, it's at their cost to move it at such time that it needs moved. And we can do it now and just say do it now too. But I mean, those are kind of our options and where we're at with it.
We can tell them to move it now because they are in their right.
Yeah.
No, we can tell them, there's places where they're outside the PUE and they put it on our property, as he alluded to. They got behind the fence as they went out around that building. We can tell them they have to put it back into the PUE where it was approved. It was not approved to be.
But for Dakota's situation, we can't do that because it's in the
No, it's
PUD.
where it's supposed to be. We can't tell them to go out of the PUE into our property, but we can tell them to move it from where they're out back into the PUE at their expense at this
Here's
time.
what my opinion is it all has to be in or out, right? So I'm kind of tired of MetroNet.
Well,
But-
too would rather not have to.
Right.
Sorry, but no.
I get it. I'm all, it's in or out, and sorry, Dakota, but if Dakota's in and MetroNet's just kind of doing what they want for ease, they gotta move.
And we can do that.
Bring everything in, right?
And we can tell them that because
Because otherwise, why wouldn't they move it out around his? too. I mean, so it's hard to say, yeah, we're letting it out here, but Dakota, you're sorry, we can't do anything for you. But I mean, that's to the earlier gentleman saying, are we going strict or not strict? Are we going to just let things happen, or variances or not variances? Are we just going to flip coins and let people winners and losers? And that's why we have the rules, right? And so that you're not picking winners and losers.
Other than we have to tell him to go back in his yard to move it again.
Not his.
Well, no, because I have to, it's in his place, it comes in, it kind of goes out and around to where it went outside the easement. So it kind of wanders from outside the easement to in it. So if they had to move that stretch to get everything in it, it would have to be in his yard again where that box is. So they'd have to get back in there to go back in there.
And this
all the
is
way.
where my history, and I think everybody, most people
Got your
on
picture?
here and others will
You got your
understand,
picture
but
there
we
in
got
the
into
backyard?
this with some sprinklers.
Other-
Right? And so it's okay today,
This is,
but in 10 years, 5 years, it catches up to you that now you got people with sprinklers in their backyard. You got a fence and an easement. Is the fence supposed to be in the easement? Is the building supposed to be in the easement? I mean, the fence to me, is the fence even supposed to be in the easement, or it is with the
they
understanding?
get a variance,
If-
I believe, you put over, or not a variance, but
If it is, then if it has to be removed, it's at your cost to put it back.
The public utility.
Doug, you need your steps, Doug.
Learning even more. The public utility easement, again, is not a public City of Clive easement.
Right.
It is granted for the benefit of franchise utilities, whoever they are. So the management of encroachments within that easement, again, is not the City of Clive's responsibility. If the franchise utility has an issue with a fence in an easement, they can deal with it. The easement is simply there to allow the utilities to put in the gas, the electric, the fiber, the telecommunication, et cetera. We advise folks when they want to build fences and decks and sheds and other types of things. If you're going to be in a public utility easement, make sure you're in contact with the utility company. Make sure that, if there's an electrical box or transformer that, you potentially bump out your fence or go around it. Because those utility companies have every right to come in, tear out your improvement in certain cases, or otherwise make changes within their easement.
One more question. One. I'll make this drawn out. This will be very legal-ish.
Five
Legal,
parts.
this will be very lawyerish.
Question with 5 parts.
This will be very lawyerish. So theoretically, if this were to happen, and this box was inside, it is, but it's inside Dakota's fence line. He has lots of kids, lots of activity. This box continuously gets destroyed or damaged or, right, because of just play and lawnmowers and kids running and all that. Who's liable to fix that box every time it's busted?
That's all I guess, probably.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there is an easy answer to that. I assume it'd be the party responsible if that party could be determined, but I don't think, I'd have to look, but I don't think it's necessarily the homeowner if the homeowner's not directly responsible for that.
I would think if it were me and that thing kept getting broken, I'd move it, but. I'm just saying, a lot of kids and everything. That's just crazy to put it inside there.
I did have a question too. I
Yes,
wanted
speak
to
on.
clarify,
Hi.
Dakota. So your ask, I just want to make sure I understand it properly. Your ask is that, starting that process to move that easement, to extend that easement. Does that ask include, forcing MetroNet or city paying for MetroNet to move that box? Or do you just want the opportunity? Because you said something along the lines of, you've had discussions with MetroNet, they're amenable to moving it, but they have nowhere to move it, right? Am I misunderstanding that?
No, you're correct. I understand the city does not have the authority to move the box. I'm asking for the opportunity to work with MetroNet because similar to some of the reasons that you've mentioned, it's very inconvenient for them. We keep our gates double locked. They cannot get in from the outside if we're not home. they have to scale the fence to get in, or they have to come back later. And they don't like that. So every time a tech comes out, so we think we have some leverage with them because it's not a good situation for them either. But we're asking for the opportunity to do that. We're not asking for anything beyond that from the
It's just the
city.
precedent though that sets for the entire city.
Dakota, how long has the box been there?
Since January.
Yeah, so it's been there for 3 months or what have you. Pretty typical that when they're, and I have one in my yard as well, the main gist of the activity comes within the first month or two where they're hooking things up and new customers, et cetera. I'm not sure if you'll see that same level of activities. It's been there for a year, 2 years, what have you. You know, maybe occasionally with fixes, what have you, but my sense is there's a direct reflection of the nudity of the box and the level of activity well, and then that will calm down over a time.
That may be as long as Metronet is the only utility there, but
Right.
once we get Google Fiber and a couple others, it will be accessed frequently. And there's no other place for them to put it, right? There's no other easement. So we think this is a good strategic move to extend the easement a little bit. Our neighbors, you heard about one of them to the west, but the one right next to us also has a lot of things built up. I'm sure that's why Metronet chose not, because it's a lot of landscaping, a lot of roots, and would be a real pain to bury cable. So this seems like just an easier overall solution.
So I get it. I totally understand where you're coming from, and if I'm in your boat, I'm probably asking for the same thing. I guess one concern I have is, Matt, you mentioned rightfully so, this doesn't just affect Dakota, that if we do extend the easement, it affects that whole area.
It's 3 houses.
Is that what it is? It's just
Yeah.
3? Okay. What is the potential, or is there a potential negative to that if we're now extending it to 3 houses instead of 1?
Yeah, I think that's part of the consideration, and I would offer whether or not we would be able to get agreement on that. And I would be more concerned about the precedent, because during this citywide build, as Jeff alluded to, we've been trying really hard and have had to have some tough conversations similar to this one with a property owner of, them being frustrated with having this in their backyard. And the city's held its ground on this when those situations have arisen. And so if we start to change that precedent here, I would be concerned about, would we get a flood of those kinds of requests? The other thing I would offer is there's other alternatives. I think our staff may have mentioned this to Dakota. And maybe there's even an opportunity for Dakota and Metronet, if they are getting frustrated with the access, if the gates are being padlocked, of maybe the possibility of the fence being cornered off in this particular location, since it's in the corner of the yard, to where that box is now outside of the fence, and then Metronet can access it from the city's property to the south, not having to go inside the fenced area. And perhaps, we already have to work with Metronet, and Jared has been working on this in terms of there was some damage done to some of the Dakota's doors that that Metronet needs to make good on. Maybe there's potentially an opportunity for them to work together to get this fence moved, cornered off there where that handhole is now outside of the fence line. I think that's the other thing I would offer. I think there's other alternatives here than going the route of an extended public utility easement.
Thank you, Matt. Other questions?
I just want to add one more comment. I do agree with what you were saying about, if we're going to have it in the PUE, then everybody should be in the PUE, right? So, the neighbors to the left and right, east and west, if they're outside right now, then yeah, we should tell them to move it in, right? Or, alternatively, if we are, and I understand the precedent concerns, I agree that raises some concern. But if we're extending this easement, as I think Dakota's asking, then we're just kind of formalizing what Metronet has already done in that area, in that row of houses.
Correct.
So just another thing to consider.
It sounds to me like maybe staff could report back to us and just give an overall analysis of this. That seemed like reasonable. route.
And just to comment, if any of you were in this situation, you probably wouldn't want to remove some of your backyard for this, which is the suggestion that Matt just made. So,
Well, just to clarify for us on the map, it looks like it's about 4 or 5 feet from the back line. If you move the fence 4 feet, 5 feet, that'd take care of it.
correct. It's not very far. But it is an active soccer playing area for my kids. So
Well, Dakota, thanks for coming in, and
Thanks for your
staff will
time.
report back to us, and we'll be able to get back to you once we have all the information.
thank you.
All right, any other citizens here this evening? Seeing none, we'll move to consent.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and second on consent. Further discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please poll the council? Or vote, and then Susan, you can vote by voice.
Okay. I think I might be able to vote. on
Oh, you
this.
think you might be able
Oh, I
to
know.
vote?
Can you switch
Right.
my vote from him to me if I vote on his sign in? You can't? Okay, I'll do voice.
Voice. So would the council please vote? Susan, and you're voting how?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And would the clerk please post that vote? Our consent items are passed by a vote of 5-0. Next up, we have a public hearing. Did we publish the appropriate public notice?
Yes, it was published in the Des Moines Register on March 15th, 2024.
Very good. Liz?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As a requirement by state code, a public hearing was set for consideration of a loan agreement for the 2024 AGO bonding. The agenda packet included a list of CIP projects that we are seeking funding for in 24-25, this next fiscal year. And the timeline for this process on the sale of bonds was also included in the packet. So following this public hearing, staff would recommend approval of moving forward with the bond issuance.
Any
Questions?
questions for Liz? Anyone here in the chamber address the council on this matter? Otherwise, I entertain a motion.
Move to close public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. Further discussion? Seeing none, with the council, please vote.
Yes.
And would the clerk please post that vote? And the public hearing is closed by a vote of 5-0.
Move the general purpose loan agreement.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote?
Yes.
And will the clerk please post that vote?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Liz. Next, we've got
We
the,
have, Mayor, we have item B of that too.
I think it was incorporated.
Was- was-
Yeah,
okay,
that's
I just-
what- that's what-
I got you. Okay, cool.
Now, Matt, the governance guide, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. This final draft of this guide is in follow-up to the work that was started last October on updating the City Council's governance guide. It lays out a number of different sections that the council discussed. There's been follow-up on that guide over the last number of months, and Strategic Planning Facilitator Lyle Summick has produced this final draft document for council's consideration and adoption. This is a document that isn't updated every year. In fact, it had been a number of years since it had been updated as a part of our strategic planning process. So the final draft document was included in the packet for your consideration, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Staff would recommend approval.
Any questions for Matt? Otherwise, I'd entertain a resolution.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Motion and second on the resolution. Further discussion? Being none, will the council please vote?
Yes.
And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes, I think. And we're getting a new system, right? Just check. And that passes by a vote of 5-0.
Motion to approve pay request number 4 RDG from the left side here.
Second.
A motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, with the council, please vote.
Abstain.
And will clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 4 yes and 1 abstention.
Gotta get on record. You won't think I'm here.
How predictive I am. Okay, now we're going to talk about sidewalk repairs. Doug, you're up again.
Thank you. Community Development Department administers the sidewalk safety program for the city, which seeks to ensure that the pedestrian and bicycle facilities across the city that are public are safe and accessible to all. We've had this program for a number of years, and I think it's worked well for the community as a whole. Mark Mertens, our code enforcement officer, administers the program itself and has some questions that we'd like to have a discussion about tonight with respect to moving forward with this particular program year, 2024, in which we had some challenges with pricing and contractor availability.
Should get some ominous music for you when you walk.
That's right. Good evening, Mayor, council members, Pete, Matt, Neil. I am here tonight to discuss with you some setbacks that we've had this year with the sidewalk repair program, and I'll be asking for your guidance and opinions. In 2021, the bid for the program was $6.75 per square foot, which is $108 per 4x4 panel. In 2022 and 2023, the program hit a setback and the city did not receive any qualifying bids. This year, the program received one bid in the amount of $22 per square foot, which is $352 for a 4x4 panel. This bid was 3.25 times higher than the previous bid that we received in 2021. And historically, the program has never been bid over $8 per square foot. Once again, this year it was $22 a square foot. Upon research of the surrounding community, staff has concluded that bid prices for their programs also exceeded $20 per square foot. And I would say that the sidewalk repair program for those communities is more typical of a public improvement project that has attracted larger concrete contractors. The city of Clive has typically tried to attract the attention of smaller local contractors that may provide the service at a lower rate. Providing our residents with a more affordable pricing is a win for all parties involved. So property owners, they can replace concrete at a lower price, not only just the sidewalk panels, but they can also do private improvements to their driveway approaches, patios, and so forth, because they're using the contact that we've provided them and they're happy with them generally. And while the contractor's there replacing the sidewalk, heck, they're getting other stuff done too. It's good for the city as well. For the contractor, it's good because we're reaching out to smaller contractors and giving them a chance to bid on this project and then once again gain new customers, and most of them are local contractors, not from Minnesota, things like that. There's nothing wrong with that, but we've always attracted the smaller contractors and it's worked very well. The city has benefited because we're getting a lot of new sidewalks and a lot of new driveways, a lot of new improvements to private property. The bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure is more safe and accessible because of the program. The affordable rates have also reduced the frustration that has occasionally been seen with property owners associated with the nuisance abatement process. And that is that nasty letter that I would have to send saying your sidewalk's in violation, you need to get it fixed. $22 a square foot is a little harder to swallow than the $108 for that panel. So again, staff is seeking guidance from the council on how to proceed with the 2024 sidewalk repair replacement program. And we have drafted 5 potential alternatives to this program for your consideration. In all cases, complaint-based repairs will be addressed through the standard nuisance abatement process, so we will not ignore that. Number one, we want to either decline and suspend.
the program. So reject the current bid and suspend the proactive portion of the program. Staff would focus on some program adjustments and increase outreach to area contractors in hopes of increasing bid participation and prices more aligned to our historical expectations. The second would be to decline and search. Reject the current bid and continue to search for a contractor willing to perform the work this year at a price better aligned with our historical expectations. Staff could evaluate the number of repairs needed that would still fit within our budget. Third, decline and develop. Reject the current bid and suspend the program for this year, exploring the possibility of developing a subsidized program for next year if bid prices continue to exceed expectation. Although the sidewalk system is a public good, it seems very few communities across Iowa do a cost share program with the sidewalk improvements. Number four, budget amendment and proceed. We could accept the current budget and proceed with the program as defined. This will require the city council to approve a budget amendment. Due to the limited program expense over the previous 2 years, staff believes that there are funds available to support a budget amendment without impact to other program areas. And last, we could discontinue the proactive portion of the program altogether and address sidewalk hazards on a complaint basis only. With repairs required to be completed through the standard nuisance abatement process, many communities in Iowa operate in this fashion. However, not having a formal program can affect the city's ability to defend itself in the event of an injury on a public sidewalk. In conclusion, considering the challenges posed by the unexpected increase in prices, staff recommends pursuing the option of decline and suspend. We will decline the current bid, suspend the program for another year, and shift our focus on attracting additional contractors and that are more aligned to our bid expectations. Again, the complaint-based hazards will still be addressed accordingly. Thank you for your time, and I do welcome any of your comments.
We got a couple of questions.
Yes.
Maybe a couple comments. So the bid that we got this year.
Yes.
Was that from one of those local contractors we've got in the past, or was it a bigger, like you mentioned that, the capital improvement programs, they sometimes.
Certainly. I researched Johnston, Urbandale, Waukee, they didn't have a program, Ankeny. I-80, the contractor that bid this bid all those programs as well, and they were all bid over $20 a square foot. They are a local contractor, but they do bid larger projects.
Okay. And follow-up question to that is, do we think that this is just more of a temporary kind of increase in the per square foot price because of just the demand that there is currently? Or is this more of this is the new future, current state, I guess?
That's exactly the question we're looking at. What I have done, knowing that is a concern, has called multiple contractors that we've dealt with in the past and asked, why aren't you bidding, right? The one said that they would still bid it for $8 a square foot. That would be a fair price that they would do it for. They can't, they don't have time. The other was saying $8 to $10 a square foot. So we're finding that number is still valid. But the problem is they don't have enough time. Maybe it's not enough manpower. I've heard that, help. Maybe that's the problem too. I've heard that as well. So it is our hope that if we work with our inspectors that are doing sidewalk installations like Grant and Dan, and really advertising this, hey, these are the smaller contractors that are doing, let's hand our business cards out. Will you be willing to do this? That's our approach next year is let's work harder at trying to get more numbers that will bid, because they're, like I said, the 3 or 4 that I've called, $8 to $10 is fair for them, but they just don't have time to do it.
Right. You're basically saying, the contractor saying, make it worth my time to.
At 20,
cancel another
yes,
job,
yes,
right?
at those,
I mean, that's-
yes.
Okay. So yeah, I'm the comment part. I would say, I think it's good to keep the program personally. It sounds like it's win-win-win, right? The contractor
Absolutely.
wins, the private property owner wins, and we win.
We have residents that say, hey, will you put me on the list to call me when we're in my zone? I mean, it really is a benefit to
We've
residents.
had some residents who don't like it very much.
Yeah, no matter what the price, right?
So
I mean, but I'm hesitant to say we should look at subsidizing it as well, right? So, I would be for kind of what you're recommending, right? You decline and suspend to see what parameters need to change, or maybe the market will improve.
Right.
But I would be against just saying, let's just outright discontinue it.
Ted?
So Mark, you mentioned that it's already been suspended for a couple of years now. And then we're going to suspend for a third. Do we have a sense for how many are out there that we're behind on?
So this year, we were in zone 4, northwest corner, and I marked 2,200 square feet of concrete that needed replaced. Out of that, 1,100 square feet was on private property, and the rest was on public property, which would be our city parks, trails, things like that. So I think we've been so diligent in the past that I guess I don't have an exact answer for you, but I feel confident that although there are trip hazards apparently, right? I found 1,100 square feet that need replaced, but I don't think that's a number that's outrageous at this point.
So that's fair. When I read your memo initially, I'm willing to certainly go with your recommendation. My gut reaction was I would prefer to do the search, to see if there's others out there that would be willing. And then if we still can't, at whatever point, we draw a line and then say, okay, we'll suspend it.
I'm going to change my answer to that.
So that would be my preference, so that we don't fall further behind. And again, if we can't get the numbers that we're looking for, then fine, then let's suspend it. But unless you'd say that there's simply no chance, it's just wasted effort to even try to make that work, then fine, let's suspend it. But if there is an opportunity where we think there might be, just with some additional research and diligence, we could find a vendor that might meet, the $8 to $10 range, I think it's worth the effort to try.
Absolutely, and I think there is a chance still. The problem is time. We need to give them an allowable time to get it repaired by themselves when I send the notice out. So that's what we're against now is time. But we do have some.
If we can't find it by this date, then we'll suspend
Okay.
it. That'd be my thought.
Okay.
Is that a motion?
I'd be willing to make that motion, but I want to defer to my colleagues.
Discussion? Okay, we'll continue discussion.
Mark,
Hang on to that possible motion.
Fair enough.
as we've looked at this program, I understand the time and the costs associated with this. The city bids out a lot of large concrete projects, streets and a wide variety of things. Have you ever thought of leveraging and bundling the sidewalk costs with other larger street projects right there in order to lock in that cost?
Absolutely have, and have worked with engineering on that. And although I don't want to speak for engineering now, I'm getting the feeling that would hurt their bids, because a lot of these contractors might think it is more of a nuisance to the larger bid that they're going after. So yes, absolutely, we've definitely had the conversations for sure, which is because we thought it was a great idea too. But yeah, but I understand their point as well. They're having a tough time getting contractors sometimes, so.
And I'm fine with the decline. I like the decline of search though. I like to put a hard date on that. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Let's continue to seek this out to see if we can find that maybe small startup construction and concrete contractor that might be willing to jump at that price that we're looking for that's negligible, and then put a hard date on that where it's that point we suspend. But I hate to just suspend that. I think this has been a great program, and that's one of the reasons that Clive sidewalks don't look like other communities. They're all very good, and you've done a great job with this.
Well, thank you.
But I agree. I think we put a hard date on that and keep our options open.
Okay.
Susan?
That sounds good to me too.
Michael?
Sounds good. With one, Jeff, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, and I think I know the answer, but can you do any of the serious ones? Can your crew jump in and You got a couple extra guys and Mark, you
Just sitting around,
You
Jeff,
need
come
more-
on.
more work.
Well, we got a lot of crack sealing to do and asphalt
Perhaps-
driveways to
perhaps
fix.
Mike
And
could
maybe
help
the
you.
potholes on my street too while you're
I mean,
at it.
Mike can help you
guys,
before
it's
July
FTEs,
1.
remember?
He's got some time on his hand before July.
Yeah, with those two new FTEs.
No, I mean,
Jeff, come on.
that's a, and then I do say, what happens to your two guys that this is, I mean, that's gotta be very timely to walk those sidewalks to find the repairs and mark them and all, and you suspend it. I don't expect they know how to lay concrete, but perhaps if they do, that time goes to laying some concrete here.
If you remember, as we went through some of the things we talked about, this year's budget also includes like a $50,000 for curb and gutter repair
Yeah.
and driveways. We're gonna work with ComDev when they replace driveways. We'll replace that curb and gutter section instead of putting that on the property owners. We're gonna be trying to contract that out and get a small contract for that. You know, again, that was a trade-off for some of the other things we're trying to catch up on and, you know,
You're gonna sub for the curb and,
more crack sealing, more potholes, a lot of type of stuff like that we're trying to get
but
done.
isn't that curb person the same concrete person as we need for the sidewalk?
Probably a different person, for the flat work on us. And again, I'm not sure who they're using, and I guess we're not talking names now.
Anyways,
But when you get into the street, it's usually a little
Okay.
different contractor that's gonna use a little bit deeper full depth saw type of thing versus the hand saw, the quickie saw that contractor's
so we
using.
can't do any of the serious
Could be
ones
the same
in-house.
contractor, but I just don't know it off the top of my head.
But we can't do any of the serious ones in-house. Like,
We could, it's just what we're gonna trade off to get it
we'd
done.
have to charge the resident, whatever we charge, but. Okay. I just want to keep up with the serious ones that are coming up, and if the
Sure.
resident can't find a concrete person like we can't find, can we go in, fix it, and then bill the resident for those?
We just don't want
Better.
the cheapest game in town.
Oh, I know.
One last comment that something you said stuck out to me as I thought about it more. You mentioned about like getting some more awareness, getting more people signed up, so then maybe it is more attractive to those contractors. I wonder if there's some SQR lessons to be learned, you know, working with what SQR did for communications, maybe even like, I don't know if there is a third party, like I'm thinking of Grow Solar, right? The Polk County program. I don't know if there's something similar to that. I don't know why there would be, but you don't know.
No, yeah, that's certainly a good recommendation for sure. Obviously, we're looking at social media next year. We're looking at other ways to get the word out that, hey, Clive is looking for a contractor. The larger programs are bid through, and I'm sorry, Doug, I keep forgetting what those companies are where we send the bids to for patching and things like that.
Yeah, for publicly let projects, we have the Plan Room and other
Thank you.
third-party entities that their business is to receipt in the public's projects and then distribute out information to area contractors. Many of these small contractors that we're dealing with are not, they don't spend the money to be members of these organizations. They don't need to or don't have a value in it.
So we don't send the information to that because those aren't the contractors we're
No,
looking
but
for.
I'm thinking more from the other side, right? Like if you get more homeowners signed up, right? It might make it more attractive to the contractor because then it's more of a volume game.
Absolutely. Right.
Maybe I'm wrong there. I'm just a thought that was going through my head.
We actually, to work the program, we actually send postcards out to everyone in that zone to say, hey, you know, we're going to be there doing work. If you need something, here's the contractor. So it was a really great win-win situation for everybody, but obviously not enough, you know, that they're back again this year. So I'll keep working on why. I'll keep working on how we can make it better. And the only thing I would say is, and my brain just went dead, just gone. You had made a point and I was going to say something about it. Oh, about the worst ones, about repairing the worst ones. The only thing that's fearful for me is that is either you're in violation or not, right? And then to fix just a few and not others, that makes me a little bit apprehensive if the injury occurred on one we didn't fix, but yet was still in violation. Or, you know, maybe we just paint a few and not others, but that gets a little bit iffy on, I think, so.
Mister, don't want to pick winners and losers.
Yeah, winners and losers.
Well, this is,
And then we,
this is one that though, that you're getting calls in, and I think if our street crews out there working on water or something, it's
Oh.
good to mark them, right?
I got you.
Okay.
Yeah.
But not walking the whole area.
I understand what you're saying. Okay.
Really concentrating above Campbell Park up in that area, just south of Campbell Park. Focusing on it hard.
Mark, just for clarification for the council, when you were talking to the contractors who had bid this in the past, did they tell you some sort of minimum threshold they were looking for where they would then say, all right, now this makes sense for me to put my time into it? Not 11,000 square feet, but if I got to 20, 25, but that.
No, not at all. And I don't know if that mattered much. I don't know if the dollar amount mattered much. When I looked at, I think it was Johnston's or one of the two, either Johnston or Urbandale, we had as much marked as they did in their zone, you know, so I don't think it's a volume. I truly honestly believe that they are so busy right now, whether it's homes, whether it's new driveways. I just think it's hard. The ones that I've always targeted, I just don't think they have the time to do it at this point. But like I said, I think if we worked harder, which we have already, I've got a few names already going there. Oh yeah, well, but we don't know anything about them yet. You know, we need to do background research, make sure they're qualified. But I certainly understand what you said, but yeah, that wasn't one of the concerns, because trust me, I tried to, why aren't you back? What did we do wrong? We have a great app system for them to use. It just seems to be a really good flowing program, but once again, they're just too busy, I think.
Again,
Is there-
they throw those big numbers and if you hit the flyer, you hit it.
And are there any alternatives? Mud jacking, is that?
There is that's an alternative. Absolutely. Yep. It's not part of the program. And we had talked about that. Is that something that we could bring into the program and saying that I believe the person that marked it is that this is valid for mud jacking, which we do offer them that communication already, right? And we do give them mud jacking companies information in the notice that I send them so that they can make their own choices. I decide whether it has to be replaced or it can be replaced or mud jacked. And that's part of that communication I send them. The problem is the program is designed and always been designed around new concrete, right? So we would just have to alter and change things to decide, do we want to bid from mud jacking contractors as well? And then how does that work when you've got the new concrete and these guys going head to head competing over the same sidewalk? But yes, that is an option.
What's the relative cost? Is it more? Is it less?
So new concrete has in the past at $6.75 square foot been at the same price, if not cheaper sometimes.
But today,
Today, it would be, a third the
It'd be a
price.
bargain, right?
Right, absolutely.
so I guess what I'm suggesting is, do you have a sense for those that are marked, how many of them could be mud jacked? I mean,
Yeah,
Smaller percent.
small
yeah.
percent.
Access has got.
And- And on public property,
Spider webbed or something.
No, it's not much.
I would have to think about, I think a lot of our parks, a lot of those slabs could be mud jacked. Yes.
well, I guess my concern is we've gone so long without, I mean, I don't like to have sidewalks that are dangerous, and we've marked them, we said they're dangerous. But,
I haven't marked them yet.
oh, you have, well,
I have not. Technically,
okay.
I technically have not. They're not painted
Been
and they're not
observed.
marked. They've been observed as possible good
But
candidates.
from a legal perspective, we know that they're bad.
Always comes back to the lawyers.
You got 3 of them up there.
That's about 3 too many.
Okay, moving right along.
How many people are though compliant like me that would just follow the rule because it's the rule of the city and I would just do it because you asked me to do it? How many would you, Elizabeth looked at me and went like, how many would just follow that, right? Are you gonna get 30% that are gonna go fix them on their own? And so, I mean, that's the game, give them the notice. I think in hopes they.
Historically, I think there are a lot of citizens prefer the city
Yeah,
to do it.
Absolutely.
Cheaper.
Yeah, there is no doubt that I would say 95% have, and that's because of the price.
And it's much more challenging for a homeowner that has one panel.
Right.
Yeah.
To find a contractor that's willing to come and do one panel.
Yeah.
I mean, there'd be small truckloads and they've done it themselves with bag concrete, but once again, the quality difference, right? I mean, yeah, so.
And I think we've got a fairly decent sense here.
Yeah.
We have a very small window where we can, within proper bidding and procurement processes of the city, be able to responsibly inquire about availability and pricing for doing some sidewalks. The issue that we have is at the quantity we're talking about, the dollars themselves become a little more challenging in that procurement process. So we can work a little bit. We'll see if we can scale it appropriately. And if we're lucky enough to find somebody that has the availability at a price point that we think is reasonable, we'll come back to you. Otherwise, we'll continue to do work over the next couple of months, reevaluate the program parameters, and do the additional due diligence with other contractors and see if we can queue this thing up for next year, if that's agreeable to you folks.
So I'm sensing you're not enamored with doing a few mud jacks, is that?
But we have no issue with having mud jacks done.
Okay.
Mud jacking is not gonna fix this particular problem, right? I
Right.
mean, if they're able to mud jack 30 or 40% of the problem areas, you still gotta find a contractor to do the others that have to be poured.
Who is the sole bidder?
I-80 Concrete is what they were called. Yeah, they actually, their business is in Clive.
Didn't we used to use Universal? Was that one of we used?
It is not.
Is not?
Yeah, it is not.
I'm trying to think who did mine years ago. I don't remember, but it seemed like it was about $100 a panel, give or take.
For sure.
All right, so do you have direction?
I think we have pretty good direction, and unless there's something else from the group, we'll get to work.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Pete, some reports.
Your Honor, so in early April, you first postcards about the resident survey will be going out to the randomly selected households. And then in mid-April, about the 16th, the period when they can when they'll receive their paper surveys. Or if they want to use that, or if they want to go online and complete the survey, they'll be able to do that. Extending through the month of April, then only those pre-selected will be able to participate once we get to May, and we'll open up to the larger group of anybody who's interested in offering their ideas. So you may start hearing some questions from your constituents about what these postcards are all about. If you do, please encourage them, since they were randomly selected, to please get in there and complete the survey. It's very important to our decision-making and our prioritization work. The budget materials that we've put out, thank you to everybody who was able to attend the Mayor's State of the City address. It was very well received by the chamber. It was part of our larger rollout last week of a lot of information representing what you've decided about the 24-25 budget and the proposed property tax decrease that you all have set in motion. Again, all those headlines have been well received. We've not seen a ton of traffic on our site, but even without getting a ton of traffic, it's good just to have it out there, sort of a little bit of an ounce of prevention. Should we have folks who have really big concerns, we have someplace where we can immediately send them and say, no, here are clear facts that you can rely on about what the council is proposing. So I'll report back to this group in the coming weeks on what kind of engagement we're seeing. On the phone side, I've had 2 phone calls so far about the truth and taxation mailings. So a relatively small rate of engagement after that very, very large mailing that was sent out. This evening, you approved a resolution in the consent agenda for us to submit an appropriation request to Congressman Nunn's office. We're submitting that with the city of Urbandale. It's for $4.5 million that will help offset our costs with the 8035 interchange project. We're hopeful that we're going to be successful this year because this is a very regional project that will affect a number of the congressman's constituents. And for those of us heading out to DC, if we haven't heard already, we'll definitely be bringing this out there to remind the congressman and his staff that this is an important project for all of the residents in the metro, especially all of us here on the west side. Finally, we had a sort of a legislative defeat that Matt shared last week, the stormwater bill, which I've spoken about at length, was passed by the Senate. It now heads off to the governor's office for her signature, should she choose to sign it. There will maybe be some additional opportunities to offer some further clarifying language in some other legislation that the legislature will take up at the end of their session. But the tone of the discourse in the Senate from the bill's primary author there was very, very extreme, which sort of is casting a dark cloud over all of our ability to get further things changed. I don't think that that senator represents necessarily the majority party's sort of general opinion of cities, but it definitely started to veer into sort of the zone of we're going to have to keep coming and keep coming and keep coming after these cities that just aren't doing things right. So we can call it an erosion of local control. We can call it the prelude to further preemption, or maybe even stepping into some of those other spaces in the future where we're talking about land use. This has a kind of a land use component to it. It's disappointing, but like we do here in Clive and like cities and I would do, we'll adapt and we'll come forward to all of you in the spring with what we'll need to do to change sort of the way we're doing things with stormwater in Clive so that we're in compliance with this law. It's a sort of a thin silver lining, but there were a number, this was opposed by a bipartisan group in both the House and the Senate. And the proponents of the legislation had to expend enormous resources to try and get this through. And at the end of the day, as I read it, it was a show of just brute political force that they used to overwhelm what were some really, really good ideas and potential compromises from folks who were opposing the legislation. But that's politics sometimes. So we'll have more to share with all of you in the coming months about what we'll need to do to change and how we're going to have to work, hopefully very well with the private sector, with developers still, to get the right kind of stormwater infrastructure in Clyde.
Thank you, Pete.
No report tonight. Thank you.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Couple things, Councilmember Weaver and McCoy joined me to listen to the mayor's very upbeat state of Clive. I think it was well received by the chamber members. Also, I'll be meeting with the congressman next week and we'll bring that up as well, Pete, as we continue to layer on these lobbying efforts in order to get that type of funding. That's all, Mayor.
Susan?
Nothing this evening.
I have nothing.
No report, Your Honor.
Matt?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple of reminders on dates. April 10th, we'll have the next quarterly staff appreciation event at the Public Safety Building from 11 to 1. So any council members that are available to stop on by, we would encourage you to do so. Also, ahead of the next city council meeting, starting at 5:15, we will have that property tax hearing that Pete mentioned related to the budget, the letter that went out last week in Clive. I know there's been a number of cities and even some counties that are starting to have their meetings now, some even earlier this week. So that will be on April 11th. The last thing that I had is I just wanted to circle back a little bit to particularly Dakota Deer's situation. I know that the kind of the conclusion, Your Honor, that kind of came to is you would like kind of a report back from staff. I guess I would like at least a little bit of direction from council on what additional information you would like to have. Because I think from a staff perspective, we're really at a point where it's going to be a kind of a council direction question. Unless there's additional information that I just didn't note anything from the conversation that additional information that you were looking for to provide that direction. So, Your Honor, if you could provide that, or if the council could provide that, that would at least help focus staff's efforts. That's all I have, Your Honor.
I think we were just looking at what the options might be, just to clarify that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Maybe something along the lines of, because I think the precedent is what a lot of us are concerned about.
Right.
And so I'm wondering if there's something that is, I don't want to say hang your hat, something that we can say, hey, you've got to have these kind of almost like those variance questions, but maybe not that extreme, or, something that says, hey, this is the situation here that's it's.
In order to
maybe-
change it,
Yeah.
it would
that's
have to
kinda-
meet this criteria.
Exactly, yeah, it kind of softens that precedent that it might set.
So if you will, kind of like is there a specific uniqueness to this situation that we don't have other places in the community?
Right, yeah, like typically you wouldn't see this sort of situation.
I would just
Okay.
offer, and it came up during the discussion, but this week I had another phone call from another resident who has the exact same thing happening on 100th Place, where their backyard backs up to 100th. And because the way that they chose, or maybe not they did, but they bought the house and the yard and all of that back there, but that it's in the utility easement area. And that's where we said MetroNet needs to be, and they're frustrated that this exact same thing that has happening with the DERS is now happening to them. We've tried to be consistent, but I mean, even if we
No,
want to carve out a unique situation here, it's
I get
ironic
that.
it happened exactly the same way 2 days ago to me.
Yeah, and I do think there's a safety component as well, just with the pool and some of that. So again, I'll stop because I don't want to like, you know.
But is it the council's will then that, I mean, maybe just articulate what Matt has outlined, that, you know, these are some of the situations we already have. This is what our ordinance requires, the options for the homeowner to do X, Y, or Z. Articulate that.
If it's not that time consuming, yeah. Because I think we all know, right, that I think at the end of the day, we already all know the answer to all these questions. We just don't like the answer because we don't want to deliver it to Dakota. But the answer is, and it's not as easy for me either, but the answer is it's in an easement. And that's the decisions you got to make for the entire city, not just Dakota.
You go down a slippery slope if you start changing that precedent.
And so
We've seen that before. That's what
I
I'm
feel
concerned.
bad for it, but it comes down to it, and we really do need to look into it. I know everybody's gonna go, oh, but that single conduit for all, you know, utilities to go through would get us out of these issues, that they rent it from the city and it all goes into one spot, and, you know, they all have to run into that conduit. But
I'd vote for that.
yeah, but that's a future talk and strategic planning this summer, but you can't keep doing the one-offs for these folks. You come to my, you know, house south of, or to the west of my house, there's literally a wire going over a sidewalk for the last 3 months up between someone's house to up the hill to another guy's house. What are we gonna do for him?
Well, I
I
think Matt
mean-
came up with a solution. I mean,
cut the-
he may not like the
cut the
solution.
fence.
Yeah, so it's a trade-off. Do you want to redirect the fence a little bit to get it out of your
Who
yard?
pays for that,
or-
though, Ted?
Well, I don't know.
The
I mean,
homeowner.
The
Yeah, I
homeowner
mean-
pays for it, MetroNet, we pay for it. I
The
mean, that'd be
homeowner
my-
does. The homeowner, and I don't like those answers either, right? And like they've said, like Dakota said, would I like that? No. If it was my yard, I'd be up here complaining and asking y'all to do it.
I get it.
But at some point, we've got to give that hard answer for the entire whole rather than the one-offs. And so I guess I'm saying, I think Matt's gonna be writing us the thing that we all know.
But then we'll have it.
Sure.
I mean, Pete's already indicated it's coming up again and again. I think we need to have it articulated so that when it comes up, we can say, well, this is a situation.
Agreed.
This is how it's gonna be handled
And that's something
consistently.
we could put on the MetroNet project page. It's not getting a lot of traffic now since they've pretty well made their way through the entire city at this point, but where you could document it there. I would also, though, remind the council on this situation that it wasn't just encroachment that we've had into the PUE areas. All through Indian Hills Woods, with the number of these residents, there was serious encroachment into the park. And so this sense of where their backyard ends has been a moving target
Right.
for the last 2 or 3 years now. And, you know, Dakota, to his credit, when this was brought to his attention, that he had built a raised garden bed with fencing and all of that out into the public park, he said, that's my bad, and he took care of it. Good on him, right? PUE is another situation where it's not exactly just his backyard, as Doug and Jeff and others have explained here. It, yes, is in his property, but there are certain allowances that were there that have been documented in his legal property documents. And this is not fun, but it is the rule.
And I'm not advocating to fix just Dakota's problem, right? I was actually swayed more by what you said, right? We should be consistent, right? Either everybody's in or they're not, right? And we're just gonna be okay with, and that's not what's happening here. That's my primary.
What's the story he said with the other utilities that are outside the fence, though? There must be enough width there that it could go
No,
outside?
they just installed it, at least what, I mean, you can probably speak to it better.
Installed it
The
wrong.
utilities just installed it incorrectly and it
ago.
never got
Long
corrected.
ago, right?
Yeah, long ago,
like
yeah.
back
this
when the
is-
house was built.
They look like cable.
back in the
But
70s.
even Metronet on the adjacent properties, they're kind of willy-nilly. They kind of go in and out and, you know, in the PUE, out of the PUE, you know. So,
I
because
don't
you
know.
can see,
It
you
just
can
seems
see where
like
they
there
go.
should be an adjustment in the easement, if that's already the case, that all those things are there. So that's a little different than just this being a one-off. I don't know. I just think if there are ways to make it work, that it isn't a huge deal, we should try to work with them.
The one thing I would bring up, that the difference that we would have is, yes, that we have some historical utility placements that were outside of where they should have been. But again, if they've done that on city property and they run into any project or in our way, if you will, of how the city wants to use that property, they're required to move at their cost. Now, we haven't forced that issue because we know where it's going to go. You know, if we haven't had a project need to do that. And so it's almost like, do you want to push that on then back into these yards, even more utilities than just Metronet? You know, that's a choice, right, that we have as a city, but we don't have a project to necessarily push that. But if we place a public utility easement, then another one on our property, then that's giving any telecom the right to be in that easement. And if we need them to move for some use on that public park property, now it's at the city's cost when we do that. We're imposing that on ourselves. So to me, it's what I'm hearing is the council definitely wants kind of some information of how, you know, other situations like this, is this a unique case or is it not? We can come back with that information. I know Jared runs into these items quite a bit, so we can give some information. But I would agree with you, Councilmember McCoy. You're going to know what the information is going to show, but at least at that point you have some additional context to what these situations look like across the city with this particular fiber installation.
Sounds good. Everybody concur with that? All right. And anything else, Matt?
That's all, Your Honor.
All right. I sent a note out that we've been approached about joining sister cities. So if you have any thoughts on that, be sure to share them. As I think I indicated, you know, we don't want to really embark on that unless there's really enthusiasm and people that want to get involved. So that's what I'm looking to hear. Any correspondence?
There's just one in the packet.
Okay, very good. Anything else for the good of the order that we need to discuss tonight? Seeing none, we'll adjourn at 8:12. Thank you.